Hello everyone. This is for the class 8 chapter first, how, when and where. Now in this chapter we are going to study about the importance of the history, right? So how important are dates, first of all? So there was a time when historians were fascinated with the dates. There were heated debates about the dates on which the rulers were crowned or battles were fought. In the common sense notions, history was synonymous with the dates. You may have heard people say, I find history boring because it is all about memorizing date. Is such a conception true? History is certainly about changes that occurs over a time. It is about finding out how things were in the past and how things have changed. As soon as we compare the past with the present, we refer to time. We talk of before and after. Living in the world, we do not always ask historical questions about what we see around us. We take things for granted, as if what we see has always been in the world we inhabit. But most of us have our moment of wonder when we are curious and we ask questions that we are actually our historical. Watching some sip a cup of tea at a roadside tea stall, you may wonder, when did people begin to drink tea or coffee? Looking out of the window of a train, you may ask yourself, where were when were railways built, and how did people travel long distance before the age of railways? Reading the newspaper in the morning, you may be curious to know how people got to hear about things before newspaper began to be printed. All such historical questions refer us back to notion of time. But time does not have to be always precisely dated in terms of a particular year or a month. Sometimes it is actually incorrect to fix precise dates to process that happen over a period of time. People in India did not begin drinking tea one fine day. They developed a taste for it over time. There can be no one clear date for a process such as this. Similarly, we cannot fix one single date on which British rule was established, or the national movement started, or changes took place within the economy and society. All these things happen over a stretch of time. We can only refer to a span of time, an approximate period over which particular changes become visible. Why then do we continue to associate history with a string of dates? This association has a reason. There was a time when history was an account of a battle and a big event. It was about ruler and their policies. Historians wrote about the year a king was crowned, the year he married, the year he had a child, the year he fought a particular war, the year he died, and the year the next ruler succeeded to the throne. For events such as these, specific dates can be determined, and in histories such as these, debates about dates continue to be important. As you have seen in the history textbook of the past 2 years, historians now write about a host of other issues and other questions. They took at how people earn their livelihood, what they produce and ate, how cities developed and markets came up, how kingdoms were formed and new ideas spread, and how culture and society changed. सो ये जो पहला शुरुआत है, हाउ इम्पोर्टेंस आर डेट्स, कि जब भी हिस्ट्री की बात करते हैं तो बहुत सारी डेट्स आ जाती हैं और उसी से हिस्ट्री जो है वो बोरिंग सी लगने लगती हैं. ठीक है, तो ये यहाँ पे मेंशन किया हुआ है. दूसरा जो है कि हिस्ट्री इज़ ऑल अबाउट चेंजेस दैट टुक प्लेस इन द पास्ट. तो हम लोग दो चीज़ें कंपेयर करते हैं, बिफोर एंड आफ्टर. लिविंग इन दिस वर्ल्ड वी डू नॉट ऑलवेज आस्क हिस्टोरिकल क्वेश्चन. हम नॉर्मली नहीं पूछते, हम कभी ऑब्जर्व करते हैं तो देखते हैं कि लोगों ने कब ये चीज़ें शुरू होती की होगी. जैसे कि ट्री है या रेलवेज़ हैं, रेलवे ट्रांसपोर्टेशन है। तो ये सारी चीज़ें हैं, ये हमें बताती है कि हिस्ट्री के बारे में कि कब ये सारी चीज़ें शुरू हुई होगी। All such historical questions refer us back to the notion of time. अगर हम ये सारे क्वेश्चन पूछे तो हमें पास्ट में जाना पड़ता है। बहुत सारे हिस्टोरियंस हैं जो हिस्ट्री के बारे में लिखते हैं, उसमें राजा के बारे में ज़्यादातर लिखा जाता है कि उसकी शादी कब हुई थी या उन्होंने कौन सी वॉर जो है वो जीत ली है, या फिर कोई इम्पोर्टेंट रूलर जो है उसने हराया तो वो कब थ्रोन पे बैठा। ये सारी बुक्स में लिखा हुआ होता है। पर लास्ट के कुछ 2 सालों में आप पढ़ रहे हैं जैसे कि लोगों की लाइफ कैसी हैं, लोग कैसे अपना काम करते थे और कमाते थे, ये बारे में आप लोग लास्ट 2 साल में सीख रहे हैं। नाउ विच डेट्स, ठीक है, बाय व्हाट क्राइटेरिया डू वी चूज अ सेट ऑफ डेट्स एज अ इम्पॉर्टेंट? द डेट्स वी सिलेक्ट, द डेट्स अराउंड विच वी कंपोज अवर स्टोरी ऑफ द पास्ट are not important on their own. They become vital because we focus on a particular set of event as important if our focus of study changes. If we begin to look at a new issues at a new set of dates will appear significant. Consider an example in the histories written by a British historian in India. The rule of each governor general was important. Now, this history began with the rule of the first Governor General, Warren Hastings, and ended with the last Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten. In separate chapter, we read about the deaths of others: Hastings, Wellesley, Bentinck, Dalhousie, Canning, Lawrence, Lloyd, Ripon, Curzon, Harding, Irving. It was a seemingly never-ending succession of Governor General and Viceroys. All the dates in this history book were linked to these personalities, to their activities, policies, achievements. It was as if there was nothing outside their lives that was important for us to know. The chronology of their lives marked and the different chapters of the history of British India. Can we not write about the history of the period in a different way? How do we focus on the activities of different groups and classes in Indian society within the format of this history of governor generals? When we write history of a story, we divide it into chapters. Why do we do this? It is to give each chapter some coherence. It is to tell a story in a way that makes some sense and can be followed. In the process, we focus only on those events that help us to give shape to the story we are telling. In the history that revolves around the life of British Governor General, the activities of Indians simply do not fit. They have no space. What then do we do? Clearly, we need another format for our history. This would mean that the old dates will no longer have the significance they earlier had, and a new set of dates will become more important for us to know. तो यहाँ पे जो बात करी है कि कौन सी डेट को इम्पोर्टेंस दिया जाता है, तो यहाँ पे ऐसी डेट्स को इम्पोर्टेंस दिया जाता है जिसके बारे में जो हिस्ट्री है वो लिखा जाता है। हिस्ट्री कौन लिख रहा है? जैसे कि ब्रिटिश हिस्टोरियंस लिख रहे हैं तो वो सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंस है जो इंडिया के गवर्नर जनरल्स को देते हैं। जो लोग इंडिया में आए गवर्नर जनरल्स, उन सारे जो नए नए बन रहे हैं गवर्नर जनरल्स, उनके बारे में, उनकी पॉलिसीज़, उनकी अचीवमेंट्स, उनकी एक्टिविटीज़, वो सब उनके बारे में लिखते थे। तो सोचने वाली बात यह है कि व्हाट अबाउट दी इंडियंस, राइट? सो जो उसी समय पे जो इंडिया थे उसके बारे में किसी ने कुछ लिखा नहीं है, क्योंकि वो इनकी हिस्ट्री में वो फिट्स होते नहीं हैं। तो हमें क्या करना पड़ता है? वी नीड टू मेक एन अनदर प्लॉट फॉर दिस काइंड ऑफ स्टोरीज। तो ये सारी चीज़ें हैं वो ये बताती हैं कि हिस्ट्री जो है वो किसी एक इम्पोर्टेंट पर्सनस या तो इम्पोर्टेंट रूलर के आसपास इर्द गिर्द बनाई जा रही हैं। Now let's talk about the how do we periodize it. So in 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a massive three-volume work, A History of a British India. In this, he divided Indian history into three periods: Hindu, Muslim, and British. These periodizations came to be widely accepted. Can you think of any problem with this way of looking at the Indian history? Why do we try to divide history into three different periods? We do so as an attempt to capture the characteristics of a time. It's a central feature as they appear to us. So the terms though which we periodize that is democratic, the difference between period become important. They reflect our ideas, our past, and about the past they show how we see the significance of the change from one period to the next period. Mill thought that all Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than Europe. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindu and Muslim despot ruled the country. Religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitious practices dominated social life. British rule, Mill felt, could civilize India. To do this, it was necessary to introduce European manners, art, institutions, and laws in India. Mill, in fact, suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people, for India was not capable of progress without British help. In this idea of history, British rule represented all the forces of progress and civilization. The period before British rule was one of the darkness. Can such conceptions be accepted today? In any case, can we refer to a period of history as Hindu or Muslim? Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in this period? Why should we characterize an age only through the religion of the rulers of their time? To do so, is it to suggest that the lives and the practice of the others do not really matter? We should also remember that even rulers in ancient India did not all share the same faith. Moving away from the British classification, historians have usually divided Indian history into ancient, medieval, and modern. This division too has its problem. It is a periodization that is borrowed from the Western, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity: science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. Medieval was a term used to describe a society where this feature of modern society did not exist. Can we uncritically accept this characteristic of the modern period to describe the period of our study? As you will see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality, freedom, or liberty, nor was the period one of economic growth and progress. Many British historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. राइट, तो यहाँ पे ये लोग बता रहे हैं कि कैसे हमने पीरियडाइज करें. सो इन 1870 जो जेम्स मिल स्कॉटिश इकोनॉमिस्ट हैं, उन्होंने इंडियन हिस्ट्री के लिए हिस्ट्री ऑफ ब्रिटिश इंडिया की 3 वॉल्यूम की बुक लिखी और उन्होंने सेपरेट किया हिंदू, मुस्लिम एंड ब्रिटिश एरा. अब इसके जो 3 पार्टीशन हैं वो एक रिलीजियस बेस पे थे और इनको तभी एक स्वीकृत किया गया होगा शायद कि इस तरह से डिवाइड करके हिस्ट्री आसानी से लिखी जाए. लेकिन जो ब्रिटिश रूल था वो मिल ऐसा सोचते थे कि ब्रिटिश के आने से पहले पूरी जो सोसाइटी थी इंडिया की वो सिविलाइज्ड नहीं थी, तो उनको यूरोपियन तौर तरीके आर्ट्स वगैरह सिखाया जाए और उसी तरह से उनको सिविलाइज बनाया जाए. लेकिन क्या ये सच है कि बिफोर दे केम हिंदू एंड मुस्लिम्स वर नॉट हैविंग दी लाइक सेम काइंड ऑफ लिविंग विद टुगेदरनेस? बट अब ये उनका सोचना था. उसके बाद में किसी जो अदर हिस्टोरियंस थे उन्होंने डिवाइड किया हिस्ट्री को एंशियंट, मिडीवल और मॉडर्न टाइम में. मॉडर्न वो उनको बोलते थे जहाँ पे डेमोक्रेसी हो, लिबर्टी हो, साइंस, रीजन सबका ग्रोथ हो चुका है. लेकिन ब्रिटिश के दौरान भी आप उनको मॉडर्न ठहरा रहे हैं, लेकिन फिर भी वहाँ पर डिवीज़न देखा गया है। तो ये तीसरे जो कोई हिस्टोरियन हैं वो इसको इस पीरियड को कॉलोनियल पीरियड रेफ़र करते हैं। तो ये कॉलोनियल क्या होता है? व्हाट इज़ कॉलोनियल? In this book, you will read about the way the British came to conquer the country and establish their rules, subjugating local Nawabs and Rajas. And you will see how they established control over the economy and society, collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought the goods they wanted at the low price, produced the crops they needed for export, and you will understand the changes that came about as the consequences. You will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and tastes and customs and practice. When the subjugations of the one country by another leads to these kind of political, economic, and social and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. Now, you will however find that all the classes and groups did not experience these changes in the same way. That is why the book is called Our Past in the Plural. राइट। तो कॉलोनियल पीरियड मतलब जहाँ जहाँ पे ब्रिटिश थे उन्होंने कॉन्कर किया, उन्होंने सारे एरियाज़ बढ़ाए और फिर वहाँ पे उन्होंने जो इकोनॉमिक और सोसाइटी में जो चेंजेस करे, जिस तरह से उन्होंने मुनाफा कमाया और वहाँ पे रूल किया, ठीक है। सो दैट टाइप ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट यू आर गोइंग टू स्टडी इन दिस बुक. So how do we know? What source the historian used to writing about the last 250 years of the history? तो ये कैसे वो लोग लिख रहते थे कि कैसे उनको पता चलता था कि वो हिस्ट्री लिखेंगे, कहाँ से उनके पास ये सब इंफॉर्मेशन है वो जो आएगी. So administration procedures records. One important source is the official record of British administration. The British believed that the act of writing was important. Every instruction, plan, policy, decision, agreement, investigation had to be clearly written up. Once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. This conviction produced an administrative culture of memos, notings, and reports. The British also felt that all important documents and letters needed to be carefully preserved, so they set up a record room attached to all administrative institutions. The village Tahsildar's office, the collectorate, the commissioner's office, the provincial secretary, and the law courts all had their record rooms. Specialized institutions like archives and museums were also established to preserve important records. Letters and memos that moved from one branch of the administration to another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archive. You can also study the notes and reports the district official prepared or these instructions and the directive that were sent by officials at the top to the provincial administrators. In the early years of the 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out and beautifully written by calligraphists, that is, by those who specialized in the art of beautiful writing. By the middle of 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceeding of each government department. So, ये जो रिकॉर्ड है वो इनको कहाँ से मिलते थे? चलो मान लेते हैं कि ये जो सारे रिकॉर्ड्स हैं वो ब्रिटिशर्स की एक प्रथा थी कि वो लोग कुछ भी काम करते थे तो वो लिखने में मानते थे कि कुछ भी चीज़ है तो वो लिखावट होनी चाहिए. सो उसी तरह से उनका प्लान, पॉलिसी कुछ भी है, डिसीज़न है, सो दे आर ऑलवेज राइटिंग डाउन दोज थिंग्स इनटू अ पीस ऑफ पेपर. और सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन को किसी एक जगह पे रखते थे. यहाँ पे बहुत सारी जगहों का नाम लिखा है, तहसीलदार की ऑफ़िस पे हैं, कलेक्ट्रेट की ऑफ़िस है, कमिश्नर की ऑफ़िस हैं. तो इन सारी जगह पे जो भी काम होते थे, जो भी इंस्ट्रक्शंस निकलती थी, मेमोज निकलते थे, वो सारे रखे जाते थे एक आर्काइव्स में और वहाँ पे प्रिजर्व किए जाते हैं. तो लोग सोचते थे कि इससे ज़्यादा अच्छे से और क्लियर से काम होता है, जो कि बाद में अगर किसी के साथ भी इनके बारे में डिबेट करनी है तो वो लोग कर सकते थे. तो मेमोज, नोटिंग्स एंड रिपोर्ट्स वो सारे अपने साथ रखते थे. अभी ये जो सारे रिकॉर्ड्स है उसको कैलीग्राफिस्ट लिखते थे. कैलीग्राफिस मतलब जो पर्सन अच्छे से आर्ट जानते हो किस तरह से वो ब्यूटीफुली सब कुछ चीज़ लिखना होता है, वो वाले। Survey become important. The practice of surveying also became common under the colonial administration. The British believed that a country had to properly known before it could be effectively administered. By the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country in the villages. Revenue surveys were conducted. The effort was to know the topography, the soil quality, the flora, the fauna, the local histories, and the cropping patterns, all the facts seen as necessary to know about to administer the regions. From the end of the 19th century, census operations were held every 10 years. These prepared detailed records of the numbers of people in all the provinces of India. Noting information on caste, religion, and occupation. There were many other surveys, botanic surveys, zoological surveys, आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वेज एंड एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकल सर्वेज, फॉरेस्ट सर्वेज। तो सर्वे के बारे में अगर ब्रिटिशर्स सोचते थे कि किसी भी कंट्री को अच्छे से रूल करने के लिए उनका सर्वे करना काफ़ी ज़रूरी है, तो 19वीं सेंचुरी से उन्होंने डिटेल में सर्वे करना शुरू किया, सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट करना शुरू किया। यहाँ पे कितने फ्लोरा, फौना, लोकल हिस्ट्री, जब सब कुछ उन्होंने लिखना शुरू किया और उन्होंने बहुत सारे डिफरेंट टाइप्स के सर्वे किए जिनसे उनको भारत के बारे में बहुत सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन पता चले। What official records do not tell. From the vast corpus of record we can get to know a lot, but we must remember that these are official records. They tell us the official thought, what they were interested in, and what they wish to preserve for prosperity. These records do not always help understand what other people in the country felt and what lay behind their actions. For that, we need to look elsewhere. When we begin to search for these other resources, we find them in plenty, though they are more difficult to get than official records. We have diaries of people, accounts of pilgrimage, travels, autobiographies, and important personalities, and popular booklets that were sold in the local bazaar. As printing spread, newspapers were published and the issues were debated in public. Leaders and reformers wrote to spread their ideas. Poets and novelists wrote to express their feelings. All these sources, however, were produced by those who were literate. From these, we will not be able to understand how history was experienced and lived by the tribals and the peasants, the workers in the mines or the poor on the streets, getting to know their lives in the more difficult times. Yet this can be done if we make a little bit more effort, a little bit of effort. When you read this book, you will see how this can be done. तो जो हम लोग जानते हैं इन सर्वेस से वो सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन मिलती है जो कि वो लोग बताना चाहते हैं, इंटरेस्टेड है। अगर कुछ चीज़ें नहीं बताना चाहते तो वो यहाँ पे नहीं है। और दूसरी चीज़ है कि यहाँ पे लोगों के बारे में कोई डिटेल्स नहीं है, उसके बारे में हमें पिलग्रिम्स के, ट्रैवलर्स, ऑटोबायोग्राफी, उनकी वजह से हमें जानने को मिलेगा, बाकी उनके बारे में हमें कुछ जानने को नहीं मिलेगा। सो दैट्स द एंड ऑफ द चैप्टर।